Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind Movement Health podcast. Penny, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for the invitation, Kate. And I love the name,
Well, we're looking at,
mind movement.
everything in combination and holistic health. So we kind of know if we only work on the physical aspects, we still need to work on the
Mm.
mental aspect, the spiritual, and just connecting everything together. So really trying to specialize in women's health as well, because I sort of feel this is an area where we really want to lift women up the best we can and get some great information out there.
Yeah, no, completely agree with why you created it. It makes a lot of sense.
Now, today I've got you on. We're going to chat about happiness. But
Yeah.
before we dive in, can you share with listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Penny. I'm a human being. I'm a mother of a 13-year-old soccer nut and a big black Labrador. I My religion is yoga. I'm an avid hiker. And I created a business around a lifestyle that I wanted to have that, to your point, is holistic and integrated, and equally allowed me to have the positive impact in the world that I wanted to have, which was to help purpose-led women scale their impact without burning out so they can feel alive in flow and magnetic.
Amazing. And I want to pick up on the fact that you said you created a business around the life you want to live, because I feel like so many people, when they create a business, they don't think about that. They have an idea or they focus on the income, but they don't focus around the lifestyle when it comes to creating business.
Yeah, so I spent 16 years as a senior executive in Shell, and had a very successful career. And I got to the age of 39 and I had everything that I was told would make me successful. And I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back now, I know I was completely burnt out. I was getting sick all the time. And I had a 3-year-old that when I stepped out into the backyard one afternoon and told him to come and hang out with me in the kitchen, turned around and said to me, "Mum, I'm too busy." And it was like a lightning bolt through the heart, because it was like this wake up moment where I was like, I don't even know what success/happiness looks like for me on my terms. I've lived by this societal definition and I've arrived in this place and I don't feel fulfilled, and I've got a small child and all I'm doing is working for his future and all he wants is my presence. So I turned my whole life completely upside down in pursuit of happiness, because I realized there were 3 things that were really missing that made me happy and brought me joy. And they were humanly connecting, positively impacting the lives of others, being present and in a moment and sharing experiences. And so that was kind of where my journey began, in designing a business that enabled me to have those things in each and every day, because I knew if I did, that I would be living a flourishing life, as we call it in psychology.
Well, I think a lot of people listening in can relate to that, of feeling like they're trying to do all the things because society tells them to do, or, that's what is expected of you. But
Mm.
then when you really think about it deep down, you might not like your job. You might not like where you live. You might not like how you feel or how you act or react to situations. So when it comes to happiness, what is the definition of happiness?
Mm. So it's perhaps not what you would be expecting. So the research tells us that if you chase happiness, it will move further and further away, right? So for me, I define happiness as not skipping down the streets and painting rainbows every day. It's basically being able to ride the wave of every emotion that life throws at you, knowing that you can come out the other side a little better than what you were before. And so I'm also a student of psychology. So in psychology, the term that we use is flourishing, which I love, and it comes from the forefather of positive psychology, Martin Seligman. And to flourish is to live a fulfilled and meaningful life that is humanly connected, because the reality is life is going to throw shit at you. You might have to live in an area that you don't want to live in because of the rising cost of housing. You might have to do things that you don't like to do. But you have a choice in how you show up within those things each and every day, and the mindset that you bring to them.
And you touched on finding meaning. If someone's
Mm.
listening in and going, I just don't know what my meaning, like what my purpose or meaning is, how do they go about finding that?
So The first thing I would say, I think a lot of people get deterred by exploring purpose because it feels so big and overwhelming, because like it's like man's search for meaning is like life, right? That is the journey of life. So I always work with my clients when we create purpose, and we work on what we call a shitty first draft, because the reality is your purpose will evolve and grow over time as you explore and experiment with it. Yeah. So the model that I love to use is the Japanese model of Ikigai. And basically, it says purpose is at the intersection of four things. It's what you're good at, it's what you love doing, it's where you find meaning, or you want to make change in the world. And I'm trying to think of what the fourth one is. I haven't got it in front of me, but you can Google it online, Ikigai, and Ikigai is translates into, basically finding meaning in Japanese. So that model is, you can download it anywhere. But I always start with that. And I think come to it with the mindset of, I'm going to experiment with finding meaning in my life. I'm going to try and fill in these boxes and land at a shitty first draft purpose statement. And then I'm going to road test it. That's what I play with my clients.
I love the idea of a shitty first draft because,
Oh,
like anything, we are going to evolve. We do need to practice and try new things. And I think sometimes we get scared of failing, but it's really in that failing that we then learn new things and grow and evolve.
yeah. I read something the other day and it said, when was the last time you gave yourself permission to be bad at something in the pursuit of learning something new? And the reality is that every expert was once a beginner, right? But we forget that, especially with social media. The only way you get good at something is through practice and stuffing up and experimenting.
Exactly. And I think, like you said, sometimes we lose track of that. So trying new things, this year for me, it's been learning French. And I
Wow.
know my accent is terrible, but, doing a little bit every day. I'm on a 285 days now that I've been doing just a little bit every day. And if I hear French now, I can understand it. I might not be able to speak it very well, but it's like you said, you just practice, evolve, give yourself some grace, and you'll eventually, get there, whatever you choose to learn.
I love it. Are you using Duolingo? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
so good. And my girls are learning, one of my daughters is learning French, and the other one has decided to learn Japanese. So, even just being exposed to that and having that option, and even if you don't want to download an app, you can, there's anything, you can learn anything. There's always stuff on YouTube and stuff that you can learn from as well.
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to happiness, I think the last few years, have been tough for a lot of people. And a lot of
Mm.
people, I think it really highlighted where they might not be experiencing happiness in their lives, or it really
Mm-hmm.
made them look at their life and change their priorities. So if someone is thinking, yep, this is sounding good and I want to change, I want to make happiness a priority, where is the first place they start after they've done their draft? Because it might feel a bit overwhelming. Do they pick one area of their life that they might focus on, or do they focus on that purpose that they wrote down in that draft? How do they go about trying to create that happiness?
Mm. So I like to work in the day before you, because the reality is that's all you've got. Do you know what I mean? Like we could all be gone tomorrow. Like who knows, right? So why wait? Don't look at happiness as an end state or a goal. Look at it as a way of being, which then brings the accountability into the present moment. And so what I often do with clients is a very first start point, because again, it's experimentation. And what I see with so many high performing women who jam pack every minute of every day is that they've actually lost connection to themselves, and therefore they don't even know, like they've lost connection to what does bring them joy in the everyday. And they don't create space for it because they're so busy serving the needs of others, people pleasing perfectionists. I work with them all the time. And so what we look at is, I would just say, write down a list of all the micro moments that you've experienced that bring you joy, micro moments that you could replicate in a day. So you could create a joy list. Yeah. And when I say micro moments, like it could be 5 minutes. So one of the things I've been doing a lot of in the last 6 months, which I never did before, and it's crazy. I will schedule, like I have 15-minute breaks between coaching clients. I'll just go and make myself a cup of green tea once a day. And I go and sit on the couch and stare out the window for 5 minutes. which I know your listeners are going to hear that, some of them, and they'll be going, that just seems so indulgent. And the thing is, for many of us, because we're so conditioned to constantly doing, rest feels unproductive. Yeah, it feels, and so there's this constant guilt when you're sitting there resting, which your body needs both physically and psychologically in order for you to be productive. It feels guilty. And like I say, a lot of women deprioritize it. So, what are the micro moments that bring you joy? And knowing that some of these things, like I've just spoken about, like having a tea on the couch, may at first feel very uncomfortable because they can feel unfamiliar and very indulgent. But I'll guarantee you, they will make you more effective at the things that you do. So the slower I go, the more impactful I have become. So there's a beautiful theory in psychology called the conservation of resources theory. And I want to share this because I know a lot of your listeners are women, right? And here's how it works. You are one human with 24 hours in the day. And when you wake at the start of the day, you have a set level of mental and physical resources available to you. How you choose to use those resources throughout the day will determine whether, a bit like a mobile phone, whether your battery is charged throughout the day, recharged, or whether it just constantly goes down and it starts flashing that red warning light saying, plug me in. Now, what I see with most women is that they basically walk over that warning light and just keep pushing through. Yeah. Now,
We've all done
doing
it.
that, yeah, absolutely. That's how I ended up where I am now, right? Because I was so exhausted. But pushing through that warning light and not plugging yourself in will mean tomorrow you'll wake up and no matter how much sleep you've had, you'll still feel tired and your battery's on half charge. So you're working from a lower baseline. And doing that consistently over time. So, like you say, yeah, we're all guilty of it. But if you do that consistently, if every waking moment is full and you are sacrificing your recharge at the expense of everybody else's needs, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you will burn out or you will create some immune, problem, system problem, like the stress that this puts on your immune system over time puts you in a constant state of survival, which means that it will just be a matter of time whether you burn out or you get some wonderful health issue. And that's why I always share that. So those micro moments, if I come back, those micro moments of joy and just becoming aware of them and then saying, right, I'm not going to do all of them, but what if I could inject just one or two more of them into each day than I'm doing now? Like experiment, practice, and allow yourself permission to have that recharge and do it in a way that's joyful. That's where I would start.
Mm. And I love that too, because it's accessible, it's easy to do, it doesn't require a lot of time. I think a lot of women, when it comes to thinking about, say, self-care, they think it has to be a massage or a facial or a day at the day spa. And they're like, I don't have the time or the money or, the
No.
space in my life to do that. And I think if we can just go back to you say as those small things that can give us joy, that only take 5 minutes, then that can have a huge effect on our health and our productivity as well.
Yeah, because it's the cumulative effect over time. And I think we're so conditioned to strive and have these massive goals. And I think that's why so many women want to change, especially in terms of their health, their well-being, and their impact. But it feels like they don't have the space for it. They don't have the space mentally, they don't have the space in the day because every waking moment is full. And so doing these activities is basically resetting the foundations for you to actually get to a point where you can create the space rather than just say, how do I make this happen amongst everything else? Because I can guarantee you the change won't. You can't squeeze a life shift into a full day.
As much as that would be lovely.
Correct.
And also thinking about it too, I know myself, if I've got, say, 5 or 10 minutes between meetings, I've had to set boundaries,
Yeah.
around things and say to myself, no, you don't have to reply to emails, check social media and feel like you're productive every second of the day. You're actually going to be more productive by taking that time out. But that for me has taken quite a while, and especially when you're running your own business and feeling and juggling kids and things, to sort of feel like you're on top of things, you feel like, oh, I should do this and I should do that. It's all these shoulds, but creating boundaries has been a big thing for me. And sometimes I'm not always good with following through, but majority of the time I am. And it has made a difference to my business, my relationships, my health, everything in my life, essentially.
So you talk about a beautiful topic that I'm extremely passionate about, which I call the layers of should. And so I would say if you have listeners that are shoulding all over themselves and spend their day in the shoulds, one of the most beautiful questions you can ask yourself is, who am I when the layers of should are removed? And sit with
Mm.
that. Sit with that, because that's who you are at your essence. That's who you were born to be. That is what you want to be. And that is the impact that you seek to have in this world, whether that is just being the role model you want to be for your children, or whether, like you're not trying to help women with their health and well-being. Who am I without the layers of should and the unrealistic expectations I place on myself?
I think that's very freeing when you think of it like that, because you don't have any of those constraints sort of pressing down on you, essentially.
And the reason I call it layers, absolutely, is because these shoulds have been piled on over time, right? Based on our experiences, based on who we think the world wants us to be, based on what we think a good mother looks like, a woman running her own business looks like, how healthy and fit I should look. Like, these are all the layers of should. If you take all of that away, like you say, like, it's freedom. It's a blank canvas to start a new journey. And it's a journey, I often say, which is a return to self. It's a return to wholeness, because the layers of should take you away from being whole. And it's why so many of us can feel unhappy.
Mm. And when it comes to stress,
Mm,
currently, a big thing in Australia, we've got, costs of living going up really high, job rate and sort of, unemployment is starting to rise a little bit. They're talking about recession. So there can be many different forms of stress and many different
yeah.
layers of stress. How does that affect one's happiness?
Mm. Oh, now you're tapping into, call it stress. For some people, it's trauma, right? So, what happens when we are stressed? We have a system within us, you will be familiar, which is the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is this beautiful thing that we have inside us that overrides our rational brain when we feel threatened in any way, shape, or form. So, a threat in the old days used to be a saber-toothed tiger at the cave door. Now, we don't have those threats anymore. So a threat might be as simple as the butter's gone up, $3 at the supermarket for some people, especially when there's not enough money in the bank to cover the groceries for the week, for example. A threat for someone else might be, oh gosh, in the current environment, it could be anything. It might be someone judging you in a way that makes you feel inadequate. So we all have different triggers. And what happens when we're triggered is our body, like I was saying, the autonomic nervous system kicks in, and it doesn't matter what your brain wants to do. The rational reasoning centers of your brain are shut down because your body is conserving resources and putting you into survival mode. Now, depending on what type of person you are, will depend on what is activated. And this is where fight, flight, or freeze comes in. Yep. And some people have a predisposition to freeze based on, again, past traumas. Some people fight, and get angry and have a go. And some people just run away. And so that's what happens in our body when stress is created. Now, the challenge is, like I say, it is an automatic system. How do you come back to this place of homeostasis, this place, we call it the ventral vagal within, it's like the vagal nerve. How do you step back into that being triggered in your autonomic nervous system? And you know what the best thing is? Once you're aware of it, it's so freaking easy. But we get so caught up in, like I say, the system overriding and not being able to be rational that we forget. So the way that you trigger yourself back into homeostasis is breath. Like, that's the simplest way. So to calm your system down and bring back the rational brain online, it can be as simple as a four-part inhale and a six-part exhale. So a longer exhale drops your system back down. So there are many ways to do this, but breath is one that is extremely simple and easy.
We've talked about that a lot on the podcast. I'm a huge fan of breath work to helping you drop back into that parasympathetic state, that rest and digest state for your nervous system, just to calm everything down. And then I'm assuming from you saying that you're an avid yogi, that you obviously love yoga, and that can be another way that people can really calm their nervous system down as well.
I've just actually literally come from a class 10 minutes before I got on this call. So yoga is my religion because I know it makes me a sane person. Like I'm so much more grounded and I've been doing it for 20 years now. Like I cannot imagine my life without it because it does exactly that. And the thing is, the thing I love about yoga is you can have your yogas put you into, that highly stimulated state where you're not, in your grounded piece. Like if I do a full-on Bikram class, that's obviously pushing my system into that heightened state, which is fine. It's fine to have a balance of rest and digest and, actually be in that sort of, I'm just going state, the heart rate's up. But we want to bring it back into balance or equilibrium because most of us are often in that heightened state in the current environment. And yoga is a magnificent way to do that. And you've got a variety of options available to you. I love to do a yin class on a Sunday night. So it's like it completes the week, but it completes me and signals to my brain how I want to go into the week ahead, which is with intention and calm.
Mm. I have that same feeling with Pilates. So sometimes I
Ah.
will do intense, workouts, heavy weights, strong resistance, or I might do that for the first half of the class. And then the second half, I will focus more on mobilization and breath work and things. So, similar practices, different origins, but ultimately getting us to the same place at the end.
I always say whatever works for you, right?
Yeah.
Find what works for you. There is no one size fits all in this domain. And that's why I think, one of the greatest gifts that we have available to us is exploration and experimentation. Yeah, find what works for you because I guarantee you, if you've been going, oh, everyone's told me I need to go to the gym and you don't like the gym, the gym's not going to stick. You know what I mean? Like find, experiment and find what works for you.
Yes, well, I hear that a lot when it comes to meditation. A lot of people, they just can't get into that sort of flow state. They have a lot of trouble with it. And that's when I often say to them, try yoga, try Pilates, try breath work, get out in nature, call a friend, get that oxytocin going, find a way that's going to help you get back into that rest and relax state. And it's different for everybody. And the more that we can build it into our day in those small increments, then when we get to the evening, we hear that sort of, we need to unwind sort of saying, we don't get to that state because we've controlled those cortisol levels throughout the day.
Yeah. Um, I hear the same thing. So many people say to me, I've tried meditation, doesn't work. And I'm like, I've been meditating again for 20 years. And I can tell you, there are days when it doesn't work for me still. Like, again, these things are not about perfection. They're not about getting it right. And I think that's the other thing, like, especially again, when I work with women who are good at getting shit done, they're perfectionists. That's kind of, in some ways, it's helped them, but it doesn't help you when you're trying to do something new. Meditation is not about perfection. It is a practice. It is about showing up, and showing up is what will give you the benefit, whether it's great or not. The one little practice that I give to my clients who struggle with it, which I freaking love, and I do it myself, is as simple as just the 5 senses. So rather than sit there on a bloody, a yoga cushion with your fingers all zen and eyes closed, like you say, I go and step into your backyard and just say, what can I see? What can I smell? What can I hear? What can I taste? And what can I touch? That is a practice of being in your body and being present. And if that is all you do, I'll guarantee you that if you do that a couple of times a week and you're not doing anything now, you will notice benefit from it.
Mm. And I think you can apply that too, even as you said, if you're sitting on the couch and having a cup of tea, you can apply it there. If you are doing a yoga session, you can apply it to your movement so that it's really being present in the moment and being in your body to be able to assess those senses and then cue into them.
Without a doubt. And I think from what I see with my clients, we are so disconnected from our bodies, which again, like we spoke about before, is a disconnection from self. It's a disconnection from our wholeness. And what I see is that I think many of us disconnect from ourselves because the pain of being alone with how we feel, like how we really feel, is too much. We want to suppress it. But studying trauma with Dr. Gabor Mate out of the US for the last 6 months and dealing with my own stuff and the stuff that I've suppressed for years, whilst it is painful, to process it, it is absolutely freeing on the other side, and it does remove those layers so that the light can start to shine through.
Mm. Well, many years ago, before I became a parent, I lived in Switzerland in Europe for a year and I was teaching. And being in a foreign country, not speaking the language, not having very many friends, especially to begin with, I spent a lot of time by myself. And I was very afraid when I was moving over there that this was going to happen. But I tell you, it was one of the best things I ever did because up until that point, I was mid-20s, 25. I really had followed everybody else. I had a best friend. I did what she did. Like you said, I did all the shoulds. I got the full-time job. I did this, I did that. And I got over there and I didn't have as many shoulds placed on me anymore because I was by myself. There wasn't a friend
Yeah.
telling me I should do this and I should go there. So I really started to choose the things that I wanted to do when I wanted to do them. And if it didn't make me happy, I didn't do it. And if it did make me happy, I leaned into it more. And coming out of that experience changed me. And even when I got back, people were like, you seem so much more confident. You
Ah,
seem very different. And I'm like, yeah, because I actually had the time to spend getting to know myself and what I wanted. And then acted on that. So came back with my personal point of view, my choice, which was very freeing for me and something that I was super scared of before I even went across there.
So I think that the key word that you said in there, which is what we play with, is want. So if you are shooting all over yourself, one of the most beautiful things you can do is say, what do I actually want? Like, what do I want? Like, that's the shift. And it's not about, again, right? It comes back to this idea of equilibrium. It's not about, there's always going to be things that we have to do that we don't want to do. So there will be some element of shoulds, right? Raising children can be challenging. There are things in that we don't want to do, but we do, right? But it's bringing the balance back, because what I see is that most women don't invest in the want, which is where the recharge happens. They're too in the should. So how can you start to bring that balance? So I love what you said about what do I want, and the fact that you have a choice. You can choose whether you should or you want.
And I think that's sometimes hard because I think sometimes people feel there isn't a choice. Like
Correct.
I have bills to pay, I have to raise my kids, I have to look after my parents that are unwell. So there's a lot of feeling like they have to and they should, and they don't feel like they have a choice. So if there are people listening in that are feeling that way, what advice do you have for them?
If you feel like you don't have a choice,
Yeah.
I need to sit with that. I need to sit with that. So the only response I'm going to have to this is, if you haven't read it, you have to read it. Viktor Frankl, very famous man, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he was locked in one of the prison camps during the war under German rule, and was a Jewish man. And even in that horrific situation, he still had a choice. He had a choice in terms of the mindset that he brought to that situation every day. And that book is probably one of the most profound books I've ever read. And so I always think about him when I'm like, oh gosh, I feel like I don't have a choice. And I think to myself, if he can have a choice in that situation, we all have a choice, because I'd say it's highly unlikely for many of us that we've come close to a situation like that. So read the book and then ask yourself whether you have a choice. There's
Well,
always choice, right?
yeah.
It's
And I think as well, if you've ever visited, say, a third world country or whatever, and you see, maybe the living conditions aren't, what you're used to and that, but they still have so much joy
without a
and,
doubt.
so much happiness. And you sort of think they don't have TV or internet or, access to, zoos and all of these types of things, but they're still happy.
Well, I would argue in many ways happier. From the studies that I've read, the more material things we have, Yeah, the more we want, the more we compare ourselves, and the unhappier many of us become. There's my black Labrador. And it's funny, I took my son trekking through the Himalayas in 2019. He was 8 years old, and we went up to Annapurna Base Camp and did 120 Ks up to 4,000 feet in 6 days. And we had this beautiful guide with us whose name was Joy. And I was talking to him about his life and, being a Sherpa in Nepal, and about how busy life is back in Australia, and how the business creates so much pain for people. And he said, I don't understand. And I said, what don't you understand? He said, we don't have a word here that translates in relation to busy. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, people just feel their days, every moment is full. He said, it doesn't make sense here. It's not how we live our lives. And his name was Joy, and he was the most joyful person. Like, it's just funny, right? And I thought, for me, that was just so interesting. They don't even have a word to describe it because it's not even a thing. So they're not striving for anything other than human connection and to just, put food on the table and have a good life.
Mm. Whereas, there's often sort of a society view here that if all you're doing is, getting food on the table and living day to day, then there's something wrong with you. If you don't have these ambitions to have the biggest house and the fanciest car and lots of money, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, and there's this beautiful little exercise, another Martin Seligman. So this is proven to make people happier if they do it consistently for 1 week for up to 6 months. And there's loads of empirical evidence behind this, right? They've had hundreds of thousands of people do it. And I love it because it brings you back to the simple things. And it's called 3 Good Things. And so what I do at the end of every day is I write down 3 good things that happened in the day. So an example of yesterday would be my son, I share with my ex-husband 50-50. He came home after a week. That to me is a damn good thing. The second thing was I know this sounds crazy. I lied on the floor with the dog and gave the dog a cuddle. That was a great thing. And I signed a new client. That was another great thing. So it brings you back to the simple things. So you write down 3 good things that happened in the day. It could be I got the dishes out the sink and put them in the dishwasher. Like, that could be a good thing. Like, it doesn't have to be profound. It can be what's good for you. And then the other thing that you do is you ask yourself, what impact did I have on those things happening? And sometimes the impact is as simple as I showed up. But what it does is it shows you have a choice on bringing good things into each day, and you just showing up often is part of that thing happening.
Mm. Well, Mel Robbins talks a lot about, her 3-second rule and just doing the thing and just showing up. And even though you might not want to do it, you really don't feel like doing it. But when you do it, just that, just doing the thing will have this massive flow-on effect for the rest of your day, and just give you that feeling of empowerment just by doing the thing. So overcoming that very small or big might appear big, obstacle to get out of bed in the morning, just doing that one thing. She's done a really hilarious video where, she's not felt like getting up. So she literally rolls out of the bed and pulls herself up off the floor. And then she's like, and I've done it. And now I can go.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I've followed Mel for years, and it's interesting studying psychology because I learned something, which is obviously the work Mel does. And that is that we have this belief system that motivation, like, we need to be like, motivation will arrive and then we'll do the thing. Like, the motivation will come. But the psychology tells us often the motivation comes in doing the thing. And I think the best example of that is, like, I think of the gym. Like, how often do you sit on the couch and go, I really should go to the gym. I want to go to the gym, but I can't be bothered, right? I like, and the thing is, I'm so past that now because I know that I'll always feel that way. I'm always going to have that little internal resistance because it's always going to feel hard before I start. Once I get to the gym and I'm 10 minutes in, and a run's the same. The first 10 minutes of a run is always the hardest. But once you get to that 10-minute mark, it's like you get that, the motivation comes and you're in that flow state. And it's like, this feels really good. So I love Mel's work, but I always say, don't wait for the motivation to arrive to do the thing that you want to do. Start doing the thing and watch the motivation come.
Mm. Well, motivation wanes too. It's not like every day you wake up
Correct.
and feel happy as soon as you wake up and you want to jump out of bed and go for a run. We just don't work that way. We are complex human beings with emotions and hormones and, everything going on. But if we have that purpose and we have the habits in place, and then, like you said, we just do the thing, then that follow through is so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, before we sort of wrap up the podcast, I always like to ask my guests if there is one piece of health advice that you could leave listeners with today, or just one piece of advice that they could go off and instigate straight away after listening to this podcast, what would it be?
Move your body first thing in the morning.
I
Move
love
your
that
body
one.
first thing in the morning. Like I'm all about the simple stuff. So I just know, like it does, it just activates your system. Like it makes you more alert. It makes you more like move your body first thing. It doesn't have to be go to the gym. It doesn't have to be a rigorous workout. It might be a couple of mobility exercises. It might be a couple of sun salutations. I often, if I don't feel like I do go to the gym a bit, and I love very heavy weights, which is very taxing. Like I think my leg press is up to 300 kilos at the moment. I can do 4 sets of that. I'm pretty proud because I'm nearly
Yeah.
50. But like that requires a hell of a lot of energy. And sometimes when I wake in the morning, I don't feel like doing that first thing. So it might be just walking the dog out in nature. Like move your body first thing. It will set
Mm.
you up for the rest of the day.
Well, as you said, you're going to get those endorphins flowing, those happy hormones. Our cortisol naturally starts to go up when we wake to help us wake up. So it's a great sort of time to do it. And then if you essentially are moving, then you can be present in your body. You can do your breathing, you can sort of kill multiple birds with one stone and feel amazing for it and have the benefits of moving at the same time.
Yeah, and you know what else? I always think of women because I have a lot of women that are like, yeah, but I've got little kids, I can't do this. And little kids is a whole stage of life, and it is a very taxing stage of life. I don't deny that. But I mean, one of the beautiful things I love is if you've got little kids and you've got like all of the stuff you need to get done for them in the morning before you go to work, put on a song that you and your kids love and dance around the house together while you get ready. Like, that only takes 3 minutes. Like, but how much more energy and fun would that inject into the morning? And you're still moving your body. And I guarantee the kids will love it. Little
I
kids
am.
love to move their body.
And sing. And the
Yeah.
joy that comes from
Correct.
that, we know from singing too, we're going to stimulate our vagus nerve that we were talking about before. So humming and singing, gargling are all stimulate our vagus nerve. So you're going to get
Mm.
those effects coming through as well.
Yeah. And like one of the things I consistently hear from women with children is, I wish I could be more present with my children. Like this is a way to be present. Put on a song and dance together. Like I said, it only takes a couple of minutes and it moves your body, you connect in with your kids, and it injects that joy into the day, which hopefully you can carry through.
Mm. Well, we all know the effects of even if you just put on your favorite song, you either want
Yeah.
to, you just start sort of bobbing around to it, or like, everybody, they say a lot of people sing in the shower and stuff too. It's just one of those freeing things that you can put on your favorite music and it can take you back to a memory that you might really
Yeah.
have enjoyed, a special time in your life. It can be nostalgic, or it can just be as simple as your body just loves the beat and you start to move.
So you picked up on something really interesting as well, right? Memories, like music and the connection back to a memory. So even just remembering a moment in time that was joyful can be anything, any experience. It might be laughing, belly laughing with a friend. Just going back and reminiscing in your mind about that moment. Again, there's loads of research that shows us that can bring joy into the present moment. Just reliving a memory. Like what, and we've all got access to that.
Simple, easy to do. And if you think of, we've got photos you can look back through as well, or
Yeah.
videos, or for me, it's either music or smell of a food or something too can take you right back to somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. Now, where can our listeners reach out and connect with you?
Yeah. I'm guessing most people will be on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram, Hacking Happy Co. I'm pretty prolific on the old LinkedIn for the professionals. You'll find me, Penny Locaso, there, or just on my website, hackinghappy.co.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Penny, and sharing joy and chatting all things happiness with me. It's been so lovely having you on.
Thank you, Kate, for having me.